Want to say welcome to everybody who has come tonight, and we'll probably have some more filtering in as the evening goes on. This is sponsored by the League of Women Voters and also co-sponsored by the Columbia Public Library. My name is David Lyle, and I really feel honored that the League and also the library has me to be able to continue to do these kinds of things. I like them a lot because they're very educational, and I appreciate the opportunity to be involved. I want to also say that we should appreciate what these elected representatives do also. The service that they put forward, it doesn't matter what group they're representing or what party, although they all happen to be representing the same party. This is a majority. This is probably the only time that they're a majority when they're together. It feels really good. We're going to take over the state and we'll start making sensible legislation. Oh, that's not partisan. I'm not even gonna, I'm sorry, I take that back. The courage though is stepping forward and actually running for office and then doing all that you have to do for an election, and then their dedication while serving, and that includes them being here tonight, carrying out their work. They have long schedules and they've been at the session in Jefferson City today. And this is kind of the end of the week. And so think of how you felt if you're still working or when you did work Friday at 5 o'clock, you kind of wanted just to go home and say, no, let me veg for a while, but they are here to do this for an hour. This will go till 7:30 and the library now closes at 8. So at 7:30 or thereabouts, we're going to wrap this up. And then if you'd like to have a chance to visit with the representatives, we hope that they'll stay for a while. And then they'll eventually ask us to vacate the premises by 8 o'clock. We're going to look forward to hearing from each of the Boone County state legislators. As I've said, they're all state representatives. And let me just do a real quick introduction of all of them. And I'll start at the far end. Doug Mann is a state rep for the 50th. And if I say anything that's wrong, stop me. First term. He is, as I understand it, on the Elementary and Secondary Education Committee, Emerging Issues, Rules with the Legislative Oversight, Special Committee on Government Accountability, and also on Ways and Means. And he is serving his first term. So that's Doug Mann from the 50th. Next to him is Adrian Plank from the 47th. He's also in his first term. He's on the Ag Policy Committee, Rural Community Development, Special Committee on Small Business, Workforce and Infrastructure Development, Subcommittee on Appropriations, Public Safety, Corrections, Transportation, and Revenue. I looked online at what bills that they have already said they'd like to see discussed, and Representative Plank's is longest. So he's got a real long list here. I like that a lot. David Tyson Smith is next. He started serving after a special election, I think in 2021. And then was elected to the full term 46th district. He's on the Elections Committee, Emerging Issues, the Ethics. Interesting appointment on a special group that is looking into the House Speaker right now. So get your questions ready for that. Joint Communication on Administrative Rules, Judiciary, and Rules, the Administration or Administrative Oversight. I believe is right. And then next to him is Kathy Steinhoff. She represents the 45th district. This is her first term. She's on the Budget, Pensions, Elementary and Secondary Education, and Subcommittee on Appropriations for Education. So there you go. We have asked each of the state reps to make a 5-minute presentation, whatever they feel like they want to say tonight. And again, at 5 minutes, you're not going to be gonged off. It's going to be fine. If you're in the middle of something, take time to finish your thoughts. So following the presentations, we are going to have questions. Audience members, you can write your questions on the white index cards that were on the chairs. And if you're watching again by Zoom, you can use the chat feature for your questions. And then the League of Women Voters, they have some questions that I think are very good questions tonight. And then if I can work some of mine in, I'm going to be able to do that also. So let's start with Representative Kathy Steinhoff. We welcome you. Thank you for being here, and we'll have your opening presentation.
Okay, and we'll see if the microphone is working all right. Can you hear me? I am Kathy Steinhoff. I'm a representative of the 45th district, which is where we're located right now. It's in Central Columbia. And I see a lot of familiar faces here. I want to thank you very much for this opportunity. It's always one of the forums that I used to look forward to attending. And it's also a very welcoming forum to be on this side of the table for. Many of you probably know that my background is in education. I taught for 34 years in Columbia Public Schools, and I was also very active in my teachers union. So the idea of workers' rights, public education for all, those are something that those are things I'm super passionate about. And when you hear the list of committees that I'm on, I'm really excited that I was appointed to the education committee this year, because it's giving me a chance to really see firsthand and push back and ask a lot of questions about ideas that people have for improving education. As I see that outlook, one of the things that I'm optimistic about is the fact that people do want to find a way to fix education. The part that I'm not as inspired about is some of the strategies that they have that I don't agree with. I think that instead of starting with a lot of, programmatic changes, we need to be looking at funding first. And when we're looking at funding, we're looking at things that are Band-Aids and cheap. And that's not what we need to fix education. So being on the budget committee, being on the education committee, those are some messages that I try to keep reminding people of over and over. But I know you guys are going to ask a lot of questions about like what it's like down there and how things are going. As frustrating as it can be at times, it is still just such an honor to be down there representing the people of this community. It's a beautiful building. It's got such history and it's got such tradition, and to be able to sit on that floor where honestly few people have sat when you think about the history of the state of Missouri and representatives down there. So I really appreciate that you all have allowed me to have this position, and I look forward to continuing it as long as you will have me. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to David Tyson Smith for his opening presentation.
All right, excellent. Thank you. How's everyone doing? Good. Thanks for coming out. I'm excited to be here. We heard, we have a long day, but that's okay. Talking to people is what invigorates me. I know it invigorates all of us. So I actually get more energy the more I can interact with, my constituents and the people in Columbia, for sure. So I'm from Columbia. I grew up here. Went to Mizzou undergrad. I went to Tulane Law School in New Orleans and came back about 20 years ago, started a law firm, Smith and Parnell. I have been, this is, like I said, somewhat of a second term for me. I succeeded at Kip Kendrick when he moved over to the Senate side down there, and he's been a great person to speak with through the years about this, and still someone I communicate with often. And you heard some of the various committees I'm on. One of the most, the fundamental issues for me right now in Jeff City is elections issues. I'm on the elections committee. And I sit on the front row on the elections committee. So it's great to see Ms. McLeod here, and she comes down quite often, and others to take on some of these issues that we deal with. We are in a time where I have never really seen the power grab that we see going on in Jeff City. There are people in power that are constantly waging assault on the initiative petition process over and over and over. And every time we show up for committee and you look at the bills that we're going to hear, or we look at them before, it's initiative petition, and it's the same ones. Some of them are very intellectually dishonest. They talk about, well, we're going to raise, maybe make it more difficult to collect signatures or raise the voting percentage of the votes that are required to pass something. But some of these thresholds would be impossible for most things to pass. And they deceive people. They have ballot candy on a lot of these petitions. So if they go to the ballot for people to vote on, they're lying. I mean, they talk, like if you ask someone on the House floor, what's your bill about? They'll tell you what it's about increasing percentages, but then on the ballot language, it will say something about sales tax, or only US citizens have a right to vote. So what happens is people go to the polls and they're deciding whether to raise the percentages required to pass an initiative petition. That's for citizens to get something on the ballot, or citizens to change the Constitution. And they think they're voting about whether only citizens should be voting. Well, first of all, citizens are the people who are voting anyway, or sales tax issues, or whether a foreign corporation can get behind politics and support an initiative petition. Well, they can't do that anyway. It's already illegal. So why are we putting that down there? And they will tell you, they'll say, well, the argument over and over is what we hear. The Constitution's a sacred document. We don't want to change the Constitution. It's sacred. That's not why they're doing this. They're doing this to maintain control and power and keep it from the citizens, because they already have power in the building because they have a supermajority. And so the only way the citizens get anything done is through this process. usually we get things done too, but we have a good group and good Democrats. But one of the main ways to get things done is something on the ballot is the initiative petition process. And so to make it harder, that just consolidates the power all the more. So we have to continue to be vigilant. It's a group effort. I know there was a voter day the other day and so many people packed the house. It was incredible. And so it's good to hear, it's good for everyone else to hear that many people to show the force down there. So I'm excited about that. On a more bipartisan note, I have a catalytic converter bill. I was excited to have a hearing on it. It passed unanimously to crack down on metal dealers who buy these stolen catalytic converters. It's an epidemic. So that was rolled into other bills with Rep. Mayhew, Aaron Cross, who's also a Democrat, Billington. So hopefully we can get that passed this year. The catalytic converter bill came out of the House last year and died in the Senate because lobbyists, were looking out for their clients and didn't want that to happen. So I'm excited about that. I think that benefits everyone. And so I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Representative David Tyson Smith, and Adrian Plank, you're next.
I'm Adrian Plank. I'm a freshman legislator like three of us are. And we've all worked hard to get there, even if you had an opponent, they also helped us out too. So the 47th district, if you don't know, is basically the 4th ward, which is the west side, West Boulevard, all the way to the river, and then West Boulevard all the way to the river, and it gets Rocheport, Sturgeon, and Harrisburg. I have the most rule of any Democrat. And so my focus, we have great representation here in Columbia. I also represent Columbia, but I try to focus my efforts towards rural because Democrats fail in rural. And so whenever they have a need, I jump. And so that's what I've been working on behind the scenes is their needs. I'm a union carpenter by trade. I used to have my own business. I lost it in the Bush Republican recession of 08. Free elections, I finally got elected. I found out here the other day I may have an opponent again, which gives me something to do, right? So it is a long process to get where we're at, so I'm proud to be where I'm at. It's great to support Missourians at the State House. And the committees that I'm on are important because of my rural parts of the district. I'm on ag. The good thing about ag is I see a lot of bills that have a lot to do with the environment when it comes to agriculture and that sort of thing. So I get to have a voice about that and proper farming and sustainable farming and that sort of thing. Workforce development. I'm a union carpenter. I'm all about workforce development. Small business. I was a small business owner. I understand the aspects of what can and should and shouldn't happen when it comes to small businesses. So on policies that you can or can't control. And of course, budget on transportation. We've got big I-70 expansion coming up here, so it was important for at least one of us to be on transportation budget. So I got put on that this year. I've got hearings next week on that. It'll be a long week next week. So I'm looking forward to questions. It's good to see some familiar faces, and I'm going to turn it over to Doug.
Representative Plank, thank you. And Doug Mann, we'll hear your opening remarks and then we'll get to some questions.
All right, so my name is Doug Mann. I represent the 50th, and I want to start by saying that the one downside to representing the 50th is when we're at forums and events like this, I'm the last one to speak. So much of what I say is just repetitive of what everyone else has said. So I want to take the beginning of my opening statement to say that the three colleagues to my right said wonderful things, but I feel like they are underselling themselves somewhat. On Kathy, she joined us on the education committee this session. She was not on it last session with me, but she has really hit the ground running and has become one of the biggest rock stars in that room day in and day out. David Tyson Smith, I sit with him on emerging issues and see him on the floor, and he is one of the most zealous advocates and one of the best advocates in our caucus. And Adrian Plank, he talked about focusing on, people in the community behind the scenes. And I can confidently say that I don't think that there's anyone in that building that works harder on constituent issues than him. I know that there was a cell tower issue and he was on a daily basis hounding the cell companies to make sure that the people in his district had service. So I just want to highlight and make sure that, you know, they're getting their flowers. So like I said, I represent the 50th, which is essentially the southern portion of the city of Columbia. It does snake up the east side of 63 and reaches out towards Old Hawthorne. I am a freshman legislator. I am not a native Columbian. I am one of those people that went to Mizzou and just never left. So that's how I got here. I am a former teacher. I taught for 6 years. I taught history and civics, and I currently am an attorney in my off time. The focus is for me this session. The bills that I filed a lot of, you know, bills centered around mental health and addiction treatment. Because one of my focuses going into, and one of the reasons why I decided to run, was seeing the pain of marginalized communities, seeing people that, you know, kind of are pushed to the outside of society and like are an afterthought. And trying to use these skills that I have gained through my 34 years of life to try to bring some respite, to try to find some fixes to those problems, and to be a voice in the House for people that, you know, aren't necessarily represented there. We have seen a lot of, you know, contentious things happen this session. I'm sure that, you know, y'all keep up on the news and have seen some of the things, some of the bills that have been heard through committee. And there definitely is a lot of contention in the building. There's a lot of fervor in the building, but we still find a way to get things done. The majority of the people in that building genuinely want to see Missouri be a better place, want to see Missouri be a stronger place. Like Representative Steinhoff alluded to, though, we have differences on how we're going to get there. And I have found that, you know, my colleagues across the aisle, that a very good number of them are willing to sit down and have those conversations. A good number of them are willing to, you know, take democratic ideas into account to alter their bills, and sometimes take our whole ideas and file bills on issues that are important to us to help us get them across the finish line. So while we are the super minority, we do have the ability to affect policy to a great amount. There are a lot of democratic priorities that are getting across the finish line. One of the big ones that we third read today was the child care tax credit, which is huge. That is going to be, if that makes it through the Senate, I'm gonna say if, that will be a huge boon to families, to children, to businesses across the state. So we are able to get good things done. It's just about getting over people's egos. And I think that, you know, when we put those aside, we can truly make Missouri a better place. Thank you.
All right, thank you all for the opening remarks. Let's pick up on this before I give you one of the questions from the league. Give me an idea of how hard it is and how do you get your voices heard? In other words, I looked what was online of bills that you all are sponsoring, and many of them have not, I don't know the terminology, been assigned for discussion or to a committee. I'm not sure any of them have been that I saw on the list. So how do you do that? And let's start with Representative Mann. I don't want you to be the last one. We'll go from 50 down.
I really appreciate that. Most MCs would not do that for me, so I really appreciate it. So you are correct. So constitutionally speaking, the speaker does have to refer all bills to a committee at some point during session. And the majority of bills will get referred last day, right? So if you go in and you look at the bills from last session, the majority of them will have a refer date. That's the last day of session because the speaker's doing his job. So a lot of us aren't going to necessarily get our bills that have our names in a hearing or across the finish line. David, Tyson Smith was able to get his catalytic converter bill heard. It was one of like a bunch of catalytic converter bills that we heard in emerging issues. I have no idea how many we heard. 3?
Yeah, 2 or 3.
So there are like ways that we can get our bills heard, but a lot of it happens behind the scenes where like you're not seeing. It's that work that's happening in offices and hallways during committee hearings. Asking the questions, talking to our colleagues, and really trying to make sure that the bills that are being passed are either the least harmful version of themselves or the most helpful version of themselves. So really, if you have the connections, if you build the relationships, you can get your voice heard. It just takes a little bit extra work.
Representative Plank, whatever, I'm just gonna come down the line, whatever you want to say about what your experience has been on this.
I have a hearing on one of my bills Monday. Yeah,
You did not tell.
well, there you go. There you have it. I'm done. No, I've got a bill it's a compost awareness week. It correlates, with the federal weekly, acknowledgement of composting and learning and, growing and that sort of thing. It's a simple bill. Just kind of push the composting issue. You know, here in Columbia, we have a commercial composting area at the dump site. And it encourages people to understand and get involved in composting. What the reasons are for doing it, as far as nutrients in your soil and your gardens. And, you know, after COVID, we had a really hard time getting fertilizers for our crops and stuff. And then the prices skyrocketed. Well, if we were kind of proactive and was really aggressive on composting in general, I don't think it would solve the problem, but maybe it'd help mitigate some of that. And it's a better process anyway. And so that bill gets heard. And how do I get that bill heard? You make friends with the committee chairs. Don't piss them off. Sometimes it's hard to do, not to, but, and they're, you know, and all the chairs are Republicans. We're always 2 or 3 of us on a committee compared to 7 or 8 of them. And so, if you can kind of talk their talk and show them that you're kind of supporting some of their stuff, and believe it or not, we have to support their bills to some degree, right? Because we're a super minority. So we have to work with them. They don't have to work with us. And so you have to build those relationships in order to get your bills heard. And so that's what it takes.
So do you hope that by saying we should have a compost week, that helps you maybe earn some credit so that you could do something? I mean, that's not a highly controversial.
Right,
Going
and that's the point of pushing this bill kind of right away, is that it's not controversial and it shouldn't be, and it should go through committee and I can get it to the House floor. And if we get it to the House floor, what's the debate gonna be? We're not gonna do it. We don't think there should be a compost awareness week. I mean, it's already a federal policy, right? They make those arguments they want to, but let's encourage it in Missouri. I mean, yeah, it should be a bipartisan deal. And
So
so,
by doing that, you might gain a little bit of, whatever I should
Right.
say.
credibility.
Yeah,
Street
so that
cred.
you can, yeah.
And I'll get to sit at the front desk and then I'll tell them, this is what a Republican feels like. So, yeah.
Representative David Tyson Smith, your thoughts on how you make your voices heard, I guess is what I'm really asking, and get a bill on the calendar.
Sure. Well, first, I'm not gonna let Doug get away with saying nice things about us. Doug's a rock star. So Doug is on, I'm on emerging issues with Doug, and he's incredible because he combines someone who's very smart and someone who's very prepared. And when you have a smart person and a prepared person, you've got a deadly weapon. And he sits there and he goes after people and he does a fantastic job. And I know even on the, we heard all the anti-LGBTQ bills in emerging. And we were there till, gosh, after 10. And out of the 7 that came forward, 5 that they basically killed. I mean, they dressed up so they look like they were kind of moving forward, but they were killing. A large part of that is due to Doug's work on that and attacking people. And he dressed down their credibility so much that the chairman of the committee wouldn't move those bills forward because he exposed their weaknesses. So this guy is definitely a rock star. You know, so the interesting thing is, you know, so when I started this process, everyone told me, well, you have to build relationships. You have to build relationships to get anything done. And I just started saying that because that's what you're supposed to say. but you have to build relationships and you have to play the game, okay? And you have to, you have to be smart about it. And somebody say, well, are you going too far by doing this? You have to have Republican friends. If you don't have you can decide to be a Democrat who's just gonna sit up there and shoot fire all day, and that's fine. But if you don't have Republican friends, you're not moving anything. So you have to have Republican friends, and prior to the session starting, you have to start making phone calls and you talk to people. And they'll tell you, there's Republican chairman will say, I want my bill. Would you vote for this bill? Would you get it in your committee? Would you help me with it? And he'll say, well, I need help with my bill. And you'll say, okay, I want you to look at mine, because they do want Democrat support. They don't want to go through with everything one side. That's going to be difficult. They do want bipartisan legislation. So before session starts, you start making phone calls. I go meet with the speaker, and it's hard to get in with the speaker. Anyway, so I meet with the speaker and I sit down with them and I say, this is what I want. These are my bills that I want to move. And we have a conversation about it. But then as Adrian said, you also reach out to the chairmen of the committees, because those speakers will say, oh, I need to hear from the chairman. So you go to the chairman and you work with them. And I've done things where you pinpoint who the powerful players are, right? Who the powerful chairmen are in those committees. And if they have legislation that's innocuous, that is not really hurtful, some people don't like it, some Dems may not like it, but it's like, it's not gonna really hurt us as Dems, I'll vote for it. Because I'm sending a message to them that I'm on your side, and they like that. So if I'm not talking about anything terrible, it'll hurt, the people or citizens. I'm talking about things that are just, a lot of times, this is kind of strange to say, and I've heard this a little bit of a trick. If you know one of their bills isn't going anywhere, you know it's gonna die, you know it's dead on arrival, vote for it. Because then they say, oh, he's on my side, and you know that bill's dead. Even if it's not even a great bill, you support it, it's gonna die, and then they will help you. And I've been on the House floor talking about an issue, and certain Republicans who they may know more about me than a subject, they don't say anything. And I'll talk to them afterwards, Dave, well, you're a good guy. So it's like junior high. If people like you, they may not like full on board support you, but they may not publicly attack you or try to kill something. So go to lunch with Republicans, establish those. I mean, that's how it works. That's how the game, all the way through. And the interesting thing is, one thing that I learned, and I'm still learning, is how you have to walk a bill like you're walking a dog through every step of the process. Last year I had this women veterans bill. It made it to committee. I couldn't, and then it made it to the calendar. I couldn't get that thing off the floor. The floor leader was not going to get it off the floor. He didn't move any bills off of the floor for Democrats last year. So there was another Republican who was carrying a Senate bill, and I had a relationship with him. He's great, Dave Griffith. And so I went to him, and so I was able to change it to an amendment, and he agreed to let me have it on his bill. So there you have relationships. And so even with amendments, you think, well, just put it on as amendment. Democrats have to legislate by amendment. Well, guess what? You still have to have the Republican agree to have that bill on there, because if he says, no, I don't like it, it's not getting on. So you still have to have the relationship even through amendment to get something.
As he passes the microphone to Representative Steinhoff, I'm gonna go to Representative Mann. You're not running for re-election, correct?
Correct.
So does it make it easier for you to be in those committee meetings throwing darts?
Honestly, I'm not sure how to answer that. I'm not sure if it makes it, maybe like at a subconscious level, it might make it easier. But I mean, when you see people saying things that are false, like objectively false, not like subjective, everyone has their own feeling on it, like objectively, either legally or medically or scientifically incorrect things, I feel like it's my responsibility sitting in those committees to correct those things, make sure that the correct information is being stated, and also making sure that the people that are trying to move things through that could be harmful are forced to do the work and say the words. So I would probably still do it even if I was running for re-election, but it might, make it a little bit easier for me to like sleep at night probably and not worry about it.
Thank you. Representative Kathy Steinhoff, how about getting your voice heard, your bills considered?
I'll echo what a lot of the guys here said. Relationships, of course, is key, and I think they hit on that very well. I like that Representative Smith here talked about it being like a junior high. It really is, and there's a couple of you in here I taught junior high with, so you know exactly what we're talking about. But the other part about it that you just mentioned was about the amendments. And that's kind of where I went into this year in crafting my bills, is thinking about that they probably won't be heard in committee, but maybe there's a chance to get them as an amendment on another bill. And sometimes you're doing that, you're like flying by the seat of your pants when that's happening. So if you're in the moment and you have the idea, trying to craft the words just right, trying to make sure that the drafting people understand what you're trying to do, it can be very stressful. So now I feel like I have these amendments in my hip pocket and they're ready to go. So I will be continuing to look for bills to try to put those amendments on. I think the other thing that people gave me advice about before going down there was you can make a lot of impact as long as you don't care about taking credit. And that can be hard, you know, like we're all proud of the accomplishments that we have. And that runs through my head a lot. So I try to think about those moments. A good example of that in terms of bills is that if I've got a great bill and I can talk to some other people like in the Senate and in the House to actually just file my bill with their name on it, even if my bill is there, and that's, I think that happened to you, not intentionally that way. I'm just saying some other people filed the same idea, right? And so then it gets heard and, you know, so you're relying on the relationships that other people have with the people in power as well. So it is like junior high. You were playing a lot of games down there and we kind of gave you little secrets behind the scenes of those games.
So that's how, this is one of the questions from the league. That's how your voices get heard. So the question is, I'm going to start with Representative Adrian Plank on this one. How can citizens have a voice in decisions made by the Missouri legislators about issues important to them?
Oh my, there's a lot of ways.
Pull that mic up there a little closer.
Sorry. Should I say oh my again? There's many ways. First of all, we all know about the IP process, right? So that's a way to do it. I know it's under attack now. But
Initiative petitions.
initiative
Hard to
petition.
hear you. Is it close
Let
to
me
you?
eat it further.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, and several of you come to the Capitol, but if there's issues that you're concerned about or policies that you're concerned about, we have committee hearings, public committee hearings. And the way to kill a bill is through committee. And so if we can get you all to come to committee on the issues that you're concerned about, and you can talk professionally about, then we want to hear from you. We can hear from lobbyists, what we do all day long, every day. They're the same lobbyists, which they're not all bad, right? But I really want to hear from individuals when we're in committee, experts. I don't want to hear your opinions. I want to hear your expert voices at the Capitol. And I tell people, if you want to get involved, I will facilitate that the best I can. Come use my office. My door is always open. If you're in Columbia or in this district, I mean, I got people that come to my office because I got a little kitchenette area. You can close the door for Zoom meetings. So people come in for Zoom meetings, or if they want to eat lunch, they get away from the scenes, you know, the hearing that was till 10, 11 o'clock. Some of those people stay there that long or longer. And so if they can get away from the ruckus and buckets and gather their thoughts again and get back out there and get back at it, then, you know, I'm going to facilitate that the best I can. So.
Let's go to David Tyson Smith. Same question. How would you say citizens can have a voice in decisions?
You know, I would say everything Adrian said is absolutely right, 100% correct. Also, just stay on your legislator about an issue. I had somebody that he kept contacting me, and he needed home workers to help him at his house, but they weren't getting paid enough to do the work. So only had help about half the time. And he kept calling me. And that story bothered me, but I felt like, what can I do about it? And that disturbed me. And so I was on the House floor and he showed up. And so I come out there and there he's in a wheelchair and it's a story. I only have help half the time and we can't, you know, we need to increase the amount of these people are paid, these in-home health workers. But it burdened me and I didn't like it because my conscience was bothering me because I felt like I can't really like turn this off because I could see him and he was there, he was flesh and blood, he was in my face, he was talking about it. And I felt bothered by that because I couldn't, I felt bothered because I wanted to help, but what can I do to help you? And the interesting thing is I was on the House floor and I was waiting. I think, well, maybe I'll come up and speak about an amendment if something comes up. And I think I was up talking to Doug. I was down talking to Doug and I'm sitting there and I hear Kathy on the mic. And I look back and that issue had come up and she was addressing that issue and speaking to that issue. I thought, oh, that now's the time. Like she mentioned, sometimes it's a split second. We can be in session forever. And you don't know when an issue is going to come. You can run out to the back, you can make a comment to someone, and all of a sudden it's on the floor. And I heard Kathy talking about it. I looked back and I thought, they're dealing with that issue right now. So I was able to, after she spoke, I went about the same issue, raising the amount of pay for people. I was able to get to the mic and I could tell that guy's story. And I told the people, I said, we're here because there's so many people of, I'm a person of faith. There's a lot of people who claim to be people of faith on the other side of the aisle. And I said, we're here to help the vulnerable, right? That's what it's all about. I was able to talk about that guy's story, at least how he reached out to me. So show up and tell your story until, people can't ignore it.
Representative Steinhoff, same question about citizens getting their voices heard and decisions made by the legislators.
So I make a list because I will forget if I don't write it down. I put down hearings, which is what you said. In addition to attending in person, you can always put your testimony online. So that is something you can access from home, at least for the House. And then also emails, calls, visits. So don't ever hesitate to email any of us. That's probably the easiest thing for you, or call or visit as well. But it isn't just us. Like if there's an issue that's important to you and you look at what committee it's in, then email the chair of that committee, email everybody on the committee. It's a very common practice. So it doesn't surprise us at all. And then another thing that I think is really important is to join organizations that you have interests in. There are so many out there. So, like if voting is important to you, League of Women Voters is an important one to join. Sierra Club is great for climate. Moms Demand Action is great for gun violence. The list could go on and on and on. And what those organizations do is they become a voice for a cause that's important to you. And many of them have lobbyists that are down at the Capitol. Not all of them, but some of them do. And then also they communicate with you when issues are coming up that are important to them, which if it's the right organization for you, it's going to be important for you. So that way you're not just having to do all this work on your own of trying to figure out how to keep up with things. We also, everybody, I believe, at the Capitol has a constituency email where they send out a Capitol report. So you can sign up for those. It doesn't have to be your legislator. I think you could sign up for all of our Capitol reports where we send out information that also helps you keep up.
Representative Mann, you on this question?
So I'll start by echoing everything that everyone said. One thing that I will add about joining organizations is that a lot of organizations, did you talk about lobby days?
I did not.
She did not. A lot of organizations will have lobby days where you will see, it's usually on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Those are the most chaotic days in the Capitol because there will be a bunch of organizations that bring a bunch of their members to come and talk to us. And like Adrian said, the lobbyists in there are great. Like a bunch of them are wonderful people that care a lot about their issues. But they're a lot of the times bringing stats and figures, right? They're bringing numbers. And if I've learned anything through my, 34 years of life, it's that stats, numbers, figures, right? Those don't touch people. Those are less likely to move people than stories, right? Telling your stories. If there's an issue that you are personally affected by, tell your story. If there's an issue that someone that's personally affected by, tell the story, because those are what are going to move the needle for people. I would echo that, if you can't make it down for whatever reason for a public hearing, that submitting written testimony is a great way to get your voice heard. I know if there is something controversial coming up, I will go through and read through the written testimony. Sometimes it's 900 pages long, which, eats up a lot of time. But, making sure that I'm hearing and reading what people think. And then, hounding the legislators. The one story that I will tell that really sticks out in my mind and will probably stick with me for the rest of my life deals with landfills. There was a proposed project outside of Kansas City to build a new landfill, and the citizens that would be affected by that did not want that. So every day I would walk in open my email and there would be like at least 30 new emails from people saying, do not allow this landfill to happen. And they were, like I said, they were personal stories, telling me about like their house and their property and like what they like to do at their house and how it would like affect them if this landfill was put in place. And
And that was in Kansas City,
yeah,
so that's.
and that, you know, that I truly believe that moved people. The fact that people were hounded every single day with stories really moved people and got those citizens what they wanted.
I want to say this at this point in time, and I didn't say it a while ago. Representative Cheri Toalson-Reisch was invited to be a part of this event tonight, but she declined to come. So it's not that she wasn't invited. She was unable to make it tonight.
And Rowden.
And Caleb Rowden, the senator, was also invited, but was not able to make it tonight. Do you have any questions that I should pause for right now? I see one right over there, Carol. And while we're collecting that, I think we have one online also. Oh, learning so much excellent information. I think, and that person is exactly right. You all are giving us great information. Sometimes, this is from one of the questions just handed up. Sometimes I can't read this. I think, give my opinion online during a hearing. Do you read that online testimony? David Tyson Smith, I think it's your turn to go first here.
You know, I want to read more of the online testimony. Especially if we have, as Doug mentioned, when we have big, huge, committee hearings where the room is packed and there's people in overflow. One of my goals moving forward, and that was my goal coming in, is to read more of the online testimony. But in reality, as Doug mentioned, we get bombarded with so many emails, sometimes, even 100 plus, or phone calls. There was an issue, it was one of the trans bills dealing with whether doctors could opt out of performing gender affirming care on patients. My LA made just a tally of how many people were calling, and it was like, I think over 100. And she said pro, con. So honestly, my goal would be that's coming in, it's like, I want to do more of that. But sometimes when we have so many committees and there's so many hot button issues, just like even returning the calls or getting through the emails alone could take you all day.
Yeah.
Even on the weekends, just getting through your emails, you could be there for 8 hours going through. So that is actually a goal of mine, is to go through more online testimony, but just getting through the emails and returning calls for, especially the hot button issues, takes a lot of time.
I'm not gonna necessarily have everybody answer this, because I know some of you are gonna say whatever the first person said. But if anybody wants to add anything to it, I think we'll get through more questions if we do.
I wouldn't mind adding.
Yes, Representative Plank.
I read through, when it's an important topic like the IP, and just moved through, Kepner's bill just moved through, rules today. His attacks on, the IP process. There's 451 comments on here, testimonies, 451. 6 of them are for his bill. Everybody else is opposed to it.
What bill is this?
This is 1749,
What-
initiative in referendum petitions, half.
okay.
And so, yeah, so I got it pulled up, and so I can go through there, I can look at everybody's testimonies, and if they write something, some of them don't. I'm in support, or I'm against, or for informational purposes only, whatever the case may be. But I can see who they are. I know that the Farm Bureau is for his bill.
Yeah.
Okay, I know that there's probably another special interest group. Well, I can look up that special interest group now and just find out where they come from, what they're doing here, and what's going on. So yeah, there is reasons to read that stuff.
Anybody else want to add to that? We'll go to Representative Steinhoff here. This says, regarding not taxing Social Security benefits, what might not be funded because of reduced income, if that would happen?
Oh, my. Everything that's publicly funded at the local level. I mean, that I'm of course gonna lead with schools, that's gonna really hurt them. I believe it would hurt our emergency responders, our first responders, would hurt the city. I would imagine would hurt the county. I would say when you look at your personal property tax and it lists all the entities, that's library, would hurt the library.
Okay, anybody else want to add their thoughts on what would be impacted?
Yeah, I have other comments about it, but.
If you want to make them, this microphone's yours for a moment.
You know, there's a reason for taxes and everybody doesn't want to pay an exorbitant amount of taxes. So Social Security and these other taxes that you put into is for a reason. And as a lot of people don't want to pay any more in taxes and property taxes because they don't have kids. So they want to contribute to the schools. I understand that. We all want lower taxes, but there is a reason to move a community forward, and that's because you gotta have roads, you gotta have bridges, you gotta have libraries, you gotta have schools, and there are reasons for it. Excessive taxation, there's a point to that. But when we're talking about property taxes and that sort of thing, you know, I've got a circuit breaker bill that hasn't got a hearing yet. But that, we already have a program in place that will allow for people with low incomes to keep their houses and not have to pay property taxes. That bill needs updated. So I've got a circuit breaker bill that would raise the minimum incomes for renters and property owners for people who really need it. Will it get heard? Probably not. But that doesn't mean I don't put the bill forward on the hopes that I can amend it to something else or get a committee with a Republican who's also concerned with it. But this last bill that we pushed, that pushed it to the counties, that was kind of crappy. You know, it's to push it off to the counties. You know, that was just taking it off our hands at the state. And it wasn't a bill that would actually help people in need. You know, some people don't pay into Social Security. Teachers aren't able to claim Social Security, railroad workers and that sort of thing. So, you know, there's winners and losers there. And when it comes to taxation, there's supposed to be equal taxation.
This question is related to that. I'm going to take a stab at answering this. You can tell me whether I answered it right or not. What was the intentions behind the bill passed last year that freezes property taxes at age 62? I would say to get the older person's vote. I mean, that's the purpose, right?
I mean,
Something
So,
that I'm
I
saying
guess-
is cynic, but-
yeah, I guess the question is, are you asking for the like actual purpose or like the stated purpose?
I suppose. Say the actual or-
So
or
like,
state-
because
stated purpose.
let's be completely honest, like, you know, sometimes people will say this is the stated purpose of my bill, and there's like another reason why they want to do it. But you know, people are smart and don't say quiet parts out loud. So like the stated purpose was, you know, people over the age of 62, a lot are on fixed incomes, and we don't want to be, you know, harming people that are on fixed incomes. But like Representative Plank said, like, you know, like there's a variety of like wealth and individuals over the age of 62. And like, there are definitely individuals that do need that help. There are definitely individuals that, you know, are potentially going to like lose their homes because they can't afford the property taxes. But there are also individuals that are very comfortable and can very much afford to pay those property taxes. And when we are putting these bills forward, I think that there is a thought that we can just lower taxes for everyone and then everything will be great and wonderful. But, you know, different people have different, you know, amounts to contribute. And I think that it's important that when we are, you know, putting tax policy forward, that we're making sure that we are trying to lift up those people that are on the bottom and try to like benefit those people. So.
I want to ask a question about education system. The question from the league is, what are elected officials doing to create an effective public education system in Missouri? And I would add to that, what are the threats of creating an ineffective public education system in Missouri? I mean, because I think that there are some things that are being discussed that would harm public education. So I guess I'll start here with the teacher who taught for a really long time, Kathy Steinhoff.
Well, some of the good things that are happening is we are fully, I'm gonna put that in quotes, fully funding the foundation formula. And we've done that for the past several years, which is very good for districts. We're also fully funding transportation. Again, I will say fully, because that's at 75% levels, but it is what they consider fully funding. That really takes a lot of pressure off of our districts. We know that teachers are ranked last in the nation as far as beginning pay goes. And so the hope is that local school districts will be able to increase their pay now that they don't have as many pressures by not having transportation funded in the past, and feeling pretty secure that the foundation formula will be fully funded. The other thing with that is the student adequacy target is going up this year for the first time in 5 years. That will make a big impact on all of our schools in the foundation formula. So not only are they fully funding it, it will go up pretty substantially this year and next year as well. And from everything I've heard, there's a desire to really fully commit to that. But they're also continuing to explore charter schools, vouchers, and open enrollment. And I believe, I think there's others in the room that share my belief, that all of these things are just diverting that precious resource of money away from our public schools. And they're diverting it into a system that doesn't have to play by the same rules that public schools play by, and don't have the same foundation that our public school, they don't have the same purpose that our public schools have. So I know maybe others might want to chime in on this, so I don't want to, I mean, we could talk for a long time about that, but that at least starts to lay the foundation to, you know, there are some good things that are happening, but it is frustrating that it feels as though they're hurting the schools at the same time they think they're helping the schools.
David Tyson Smith, sir.
No, I mean, Ref Steinhoff basically covered all the bases there. Foundation formula, there's transportation issues, fully funding our line. You know, one of the things that is one of the more controversial issues that come up is the voucher issues, open enrollment, which we just heard recently. And that can be very conniving because, you know, they don't always explain it exactly as what it's going to look like and the effects on a lot of communities. When you allow students to transfer, they say, well, we're going to cap the amount of people that can go, or people can, I guess they can come back after a certain amount of time. They can't just like bounce around, but you really don't know the effects of that. And one thing that Rep. Steinhoff mentions with charter schools, it's kind of a free for all with those. A lot of people don't realize that they open and close a lot. Anything goes with these boards, and it's not some panacea the way it's always described. There's a few charter schools that have been successful for a long period of time in the St. Louis area. And Representative Butts talks about those, and he backs a lot of those. But outside of that, it's a lot of snake oil. And so we have to be very careful and guarded about that.
Representative Plank, you want to add anything?
Well, yeah.
Never been
Save something. I got an opportunity to give a little weekly testimony, we'll call it Quicks and Crest out of Mobley, and we talked about open enrollment. I've met with a principal group at north western Missouri. We had breakfast in Macon. Their first concerns is, what's your stance on open enrollment? Well, there's not a school district that I know of in the state of Missouri that's for open enrollment or vouchers or anything. They know that can hurt them. And so whenever Republicans are pushing these types of policies, it's because it's not just they're not listening. They don't care. They have their own ideology. The charter school system, they're calling that a public system, and they have to call it public in order to take your tax dollars to put towards it. And so that diverts more funds out of the public school system. And they're already struggling. And the school districts that are going to suffer the most are the ones that don't have as many students. And you're talking about rural. And if you want to know who's destroying rural Missouri, it's Republicans. And that may be my opinion, but it's pretty accurate. It's the same with farmers. I mean, they really went to corporate ag instead of actually creating new farmers. And so I've talked to a lot of principals. And so I was in Harrisburg yesterday because Parsons was at one of my schools. I say mine, in my district.
And they had the same questions. They were talking about the open enrollment. Well, the policy that we just went through is a voluntary program. There's not a school district in the state that's going to sign up for it. It was a waste of our time.
What did they help?
Let me
you
just
with?
ask then, because, and I know there've been national books written on this and articles and others. Why do people vote for things? The rural population of Missouri will vote for those who you just described are destroying them. So why, what could be done to change that? And I don't know what, I mean, we don't vote for our best interest is what I'm saying.
I mean, do you have like 4 or 5 hours
Yeah,
to, you know,
sure.
break down the
Like-
sociology and the psychology of that? No, so I'm actually gonna push back on something that you said, so I apologize for that. But the idea of like not voting for your best interests, right? I think that that's a little bit of a misnomer, right? Because like, we don't know what those people's interests are, like what they prioritize and stuff like that. And I think that, you know, what they prioritize are the things that those Republicans are doing. And the other things kind of they can like live with or deal with, or they have been, you know, they firmly believe that these things are going to help them. You know, we live in an era of social media, 24-hour news, etc. Right? So like we are all bombarded with information and opinions that look like information. So, you know, people might be, you know, what I would think as being misled. So, you know, what Adrian does is really important, going out into rural Missouri. Again, to say nice things about my colleagues. Adrian is not just going out in rural Missouri in his district. I know that he goes out across the state to speak to people. Really putting in the work to try to make those inroads. Because like I said before, it's about stories, it's about personal connections. And if we as Democrats want to make inroads in rural Missouri, if we want to be able to sell people on our ideas in rural Missouri, we have to be in those places and we have to not just talk, but listen, and build those relationships, because people are much more likely to listen to your ideas and understand your ideas if they like you first. So.
Can you have one more time on it?
Yes, and as you take the microphone, I'm gonna ask you to define open enrollment, just for those who want to hear your
Yeah.
definition.
Great. I just wanted to add on the end to your point. This open enrollment bill was not a slam dunk for them. So were a lot of our representatives that voted against it. And I know that they were even concerned about whether they would really be able to pass it because of that. Many of our rural representatives understand that this could really, really hurt their schools. It could end up eventually closing some schools and consolidating some schools. And when you think about small towns, that really, really hurts a community. So I know that I spoke on the floor against open enrollment, and I was surprised at how many Republicans came up afterwards and thanked me for what I said. I was very surprised. I did not understand that there were that many.
Tell us
That-
what
Is
you
it
said.
school choice? Is that what we're
Yes.
talking about?
So
School
open
choice is another word, 2 words for open enrollment.
Right, so what it would, if it were the wild, wild west of open enrollment, it would basically say that if you've got a child, you can enroll them in any public school in the state. And the state dollars will follow that child.
Hmm.
Now, this particular one that passed, we keep hearing it's the best of the open enrollment bills. And to the point that Representative Mann made, it is voluntary, so if there's a good chance that nobody will ever use it. But there were a lot of things within the bill, even though it supposedly wasn't that harmful, it allowed the the non-resident school district. So the district that would receive children, they would open their doors and say, hey, we have slots. Unless your special ed services exceed what we can handle. So it gave them permission to refuse some special ed students. And unless you have discipline records, because we don't want any of that. And there was also a small caveat where they would pay for transportation if it was a district that shared a boundary with their resident district. But if it didn't, then you were responsible for transportation. And if your IEP, and if you don't know, that's again, students with special ed. If your IEP required that you have transportation, you would have to waive that before you got accepted in. So you think about the peril that we're putting our districts in, because when they sue, and they would sue, I would sue if I had a special ed child and was told that I couldn't go to a district because they were special ed. And when they sue, they're not gonna sue the state. They're gonna sue our districts. So the other thing that I think you all would find of interest is that this year, several new committees were formed. The one that I wanted to talk about was the Special Committee on Education Reform. So I believe one of my fellow reps up here talked about you have to get your bills through committee to get to the floor. Well, there are some bills that probably didn't have a chance of getting through the regular Education Committee. And that's why they went through the Committee on Education Reform. And one of those bills is the bill that would expand charters in Columbia, which did pass through that special committee.
Did or did not?
It did. It did.
Right.
Go ahead.
So I want to end the education discussion on a upbeat note. Leave everyone something happy, because there is something that was forgotten about education that is actually a good thing that is happening and being discussed. In the education committee, we did discuss a bill dealing with early childhood education, which I think would be wonderful and amazing and do great things for our kiddos. Essentially what it would do is it's a funding bill that would allow districts that have programs for kids younger than the kindergarten age to get refunded when they have students that would qualify for free and reduced lunch. So this would open up that early childhood education access to more people, so that we have more students going into kindergarten that are prepared, that have, done the things beforehand, that are ready for kindergarten. And anyone that has ever taught knows that, having a student come in that's prepared is huge, because you don't have to work on making up ground. And the piece of falling behind becomes a downward spiral, that if someone doesn't come in prepared to kindergarten, there's a good chance that they could end up working farther and farther back as they go through their academic career. So getting this passed is very important to me, and I know very important to a lot of people at this table and in the House in general.
I want to ask a couple of questions before we run completely out of time, and I'll push the limits here just a bit. We'll start with Representative David Tyson Smith on this. I don't think people pay attention sometimes to what's happening in government and politics until maybe they get ready to vote. And then I'm not sure what motivates them to vote for a certain person. It could be just the party label. It could be they know somebody who knows them, or they've crossed paths with you. Been looking from your experience, what do you think matters most to a voter who's going to cast a vote for you or for your opponent? Because I think that I read something today that just blew my mind. It was on a national story, and it was talking about a national personality that 50% easily of voters had no idea that a certain thing had happened. And I said, what size rock were they living under? And so I just am afraid that people don't pay attention to things other than just, do I like him or not?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. It's really the $1 million question. I think people have interest and education at various levels of the spectrum, right? You have some people who are very involved, some people are less involved, some people who are not involved at all and just show up when it's time to vote, and the signs are out and people are doing get out the vote campaigns. That's when they show up, or that's when they get engaged and start paying attention. Some people are paying attention the whole time, some people are not. I know for me, and this is a lesson that I learned as a new attorney. So this is how I posture myself to get people to vote for me. My boss told me something at this law firm. He said something to the, and I was a new attorney, something to the effect of this. I was concerned about how to get clients, because as an attorney, you win cases, you lose cases, you settle cases too, but you can't guarantee a win. It's not like building a fence where, you're gonna get it right or you come back and do it again, like I'm sure Plank would do. He would get it right the first time. He would get it right the first time. But as an attorney, you may lose. So I think, how do you keep people coming back? And he said to me, David, what people are looking for is they're wanting someone to fight for them. At the end of the day, people just want someone to fight for them. And you're gonna win some and you're gonna lose some, but they want someone that's out there fighting. And so that's the approach I took as an attorney, and that's the approach I take down in Jefferson City. People want someone to fight for them. When a bill comes up on the floor, people want you to get up and go after the person that's trying to pass this garbage down everyone's throat. People want someone that's gonna stand up and say the right thing, and they want people to call people out on things. And you know what? You win some, right? It's not always you're taking a bath or a beating with these issues, but that's what people want. So for me, I can't speak to, why this person's voting for that person, this person's voting for this person. I try to be the person that people can look at me and say, you know what? He's gonna fight for me, and he's gonna fight for my issues. And but that's how I view it, and that's what I do, so.
I'm gonna let everybody answer this however you want to, and be as kind of as concise as you can be. I got one more I want to ask after this. What's yours, Representative Plank?
Well, I think David hit it right on the head, that's not just about fighting for them at the Capitol. That's all the rule that I have. I've got sturgeon, they've got ash trees that are getting eaten by bugs that came over from China. And they gotta cut down a bunch of trees and then replant and then spray the ones that are still living. They don't have the tax income to take care of that. They got 5 miles of asbestos water lines. They've got sewage water treatment plant that needs expanded because they can't add any more houses to the community. Harrisburg has the same sewage problem, treatment problem. They need to expand because they can't add any more houses to the community. Roachport has got the cell phone tower, traffic speed, water retention wall, it's something else. Anyway, so I've gotten a hold of all their boards beforehand, before session started. I said, what's the need? And this is what I find out, right? And so I'm trying to get money in the budget and word it just right, because it has to be worded just right. They'll just pull it right out, right? There's one opportunity basically to get stuff put in, 2 opportunities to get stuff put in a budget, but they can always be taken out, and so they call me freely now, which they were hesitant before, because they know that I'm going to bat for them, because every time I make progress, I say, this is what I've done, and we're hoping for this result. And so those rural communities, which I need to succeed in to get rolled back, so we can be an example, and that's why they're gonna vote for me. It won't matter what party, because when I go and visit with them, I say, I don't care if you're Republican. I don't care. You have needs, we all have needs. We're all looking to better our communities. Let's work together and get it done.
Representative Mann, your answer to the question about what appeals to people?
So I'll try to keep it short. The former civics teacher in me wants to go through like straight ticket voter and why people are straight ticket voters or split ticket voter, all that. So I want to begin by just agreeing with everything that was said before. I also want to say that, point out that for a lot of people, not paying attention to politics isn't like an issue of like laziness or not caring. It's an issue of bandwidth, right? Like if you are working 2 or 3 jobs and like trying to like keep your family together and all of that, like you might not have time to, read the news super thoroughly or pay super close attention to things. And that's why we need to be going out to people, right? When I was campaigning, one of the things that I heard over and over and over again that has really stuck with me was people that I would talk to that would say, this is the first time a politician has ever come to my door. This is the first time I have ever talked to a politician. And that really, I could tell that went a long way for them. Because like they said, like people aren't necessarily looking for just a bucket of policies, right? Like if people wanted to just vote for a bucket of policies, that would make our lives a lot different. But they want to vote for someone that they feel cares about them, cares about their family, cares about their community, and is willing to put in the work and fight for them. And it's really hard to make that case to people if you're not with them, if you're not around them, if you're not talking to them. And that's why it's important for us to go out, meet the people, talk with the people, listen to the people, and through that, gain the trust of the people. And then once we've gained their trust, I feel confident that we'll have gained their vote.
Representative Steinhoff, a final thought on this particular
I'm
question.
just gonna say the same thing with different words, so you could go to the next question if you want. These guys gave great answers.
Yeah, I thought their answers were good also. And let's go to the what I would like to get a short answer from each of you, and we'll start with Representative Plank. If a young person expressed an interest in running for state legislator to you, what would you tell that person?
Suppose that depends on how young they are.
Well, I mean, I understand that Doug Mann is going to say he's 34. He's a young guy in the.
If somebody wanted to run for office at 30 years old. I'd
Or
say
21 or 25.
whatever, yeah, whatever the age may be, I'd say do it. I mean, it's, you know, I'm a firm believer in, jumping in and doing things. Regardless of what your knowledge may be of it, because that's how you learn. And so I ran election 3 times. And I know how to do it better than most anymore. So, I know that people don't like to knock doors, but I can tell you, once you get used to it, you enjoy it. And so, I tell a young person, if you want to run for office, jump in, I'll help you the best I can. And I do that all the time. I mean, I've been a part of a lot of campaigns, from Renee Hoganson to, I mean, a ton of campaigns and helped out the best I can. And so I encourage anybody, you know, go ahead and do some research, but I'm not going to discourage you from running for office.
Representative Doug Mann, what's your thought on that question?
So first of all, I would tell them that there is no perfect resume for someone that runs for office, right? We need people in there from all different walks of life. I say this as someone that is an attorney. And I always remember there was a story that President Biden told about like why he ended up going to law school is because he looked in a book of all the senators and saw that it was lawyer, 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 lawyer. And was like, well, if I want to get to the Senate, I should be a lawyer. And, you know, but you don't need that, right? Having wide perspectives is great. It helps build the strength of our, you know, legislature, of our government. You know, a very like technical answer, I would say get very used to being on the phone with strangers. Because calling and asking for money is going to be a large portion of your time. And then also get out there and get involved in your community, right? You know, join an organization, volunteer, you know, so then it gets back to that thing about people knowing you, people understanding what you stand for, and people trusting you. And, you know, when you do that, jump in, don't be scared. Because, you know, you might lose the first time, you might win the first time, but if you lose the first time, dust yourself off, get back up, get back out there.
Representative Steinhoff, same question.
I was jotting down some things that I thought were good as a legislator. I would say experience really does help. What I know about education now would be really hard for somebody who just walked into this and didn't know. But there's also other fields that I know nothing about in this role. I think that caring about doing this is really important. So if somebody's wanting to run because they just want the power, they're gonna run into a little bit of trouble. So if it's something they care about, working hard, I see people down at that Capitol working hard every day, and then I see others that are absolutely not. And they're not being successful. And then the other thing I put on here is a skill set. Some people just have a natural skill set for this. Some people have honed it over the years. I feel like I have, you know, I've acquired mine after doing a lot of things before this. So when I think about a young person, there's still a lot there that they could have to build on and still be successful, but really caring about doing it and then being willing to work hard, I think outweigh the others. So yes.
David Tyson Smith, final word.
So one, you want, I would say, read. You want to read as much as possible, read the newspapers, make sure you're educated. Also, as Rep. Steinhoff said, you need to have to develop a work ethic. Okay, you have to be diligent. But people have to see you in the position you want. So whatever position you want, whether that's the workforce or in politics, they have to see you in that position before you're there. So you need to position yourself and posture yourself in that role and in that position before you get there. So when there's an opening, they will come to you. If there's an opening and you have to beg everyone for that opening, then you haven't positioned yourself appropriately. If there's an opening, people will then come to you and say, hey, I want you to do this. Whatever office you want, people have to see you in that office. And so position yourself that way, get involved. I used to show up at, when I used to show up at community meetings like 15, 20 years ago. I didn't even know what the issue was. I would show up, I'd see cars at some type of community event, go in, sit there, listen to what the issues were, and then go up and get in front of the microphone and start talking about the issue. So people would see me as a leader and someone who cared about the issues. So prepare in advance.
I gotta tell you, I think it's been terrific. You all been great.
Yes.
I hope people spread the news. This is recorded. I think it'll be available, so check the
You all
League of
running
Women
for
Voters.
office? Coming up, not this election.
You all are all
Except for this.
All are running for reelection except Doug Mann, but I think that's a shame. I mean, all are powerful voices up here, and I think we have just had a great lesson.
Can I just make sure people know about another thing?
Sure.
We are taking turns, and Caleb, I'm sorry, Senator Rowden is also a part of this. We're gonna be here at the library on Saturday mornings from 9:30 to 10:30. There's a little flyer out there that you can look at. I'm here this Saturday. So as things happen in session, if you want to ask questions to one of us being here about what's going on, or just give us your thoughts on things, I hope you'll join us.
So there's a different representative or senator every Saturday morning, you say, from what, 9:30 to 10:30?
9:30 to 10:30. There's a couple Saturdays we've missed that are around our spring break and holidays, but there's a schedule out there that you can pick up.
That's terrific. Yes.
Our candidate forum on the 21st.
Candidate forum on March 21st will be for the race for city council in Ward 2, and then also the recall from Ward 1. That councilman will be here, plus the person who led the recall petition, and then also the candidates for school board for the Columbia Public School District. So that'll be here in this room on the 21st of March. You all have been really good to be here tonight. Spread the word that people missed out on some great thoughts and great insight into what our state legislators are doing. Representatives Mann, Plank, Tyson Smith, and Steinhoff, thank you all for this time.